Hello, folks. Welcome to Between Awesome and Disaster. This is your host, Will Carey. I appreciate you being here, and thank you for taking the time to listen to my show today. It means a lot to me because I have a really great time putting the show together, and I'm feeling really confident today because I just through YouTube and Google figured out how to adjust the truss rod on my bass guitar, and I got it playing a lot better than it had been. So I'm feeling pretty accomplished. And this sense of accomplishment bleeds into into our show today because my guests on the show are two members of one of my favorite bands. Today I'm sitting down with Justin Sane and Chris Number 2 from the band Anti-Flag, who I've been a fan of since I discovered them in like 2006, I think. I first heard of them through I read about them in I think Guitar World magazine, and then I got their album For Blood and Empire, and then went and found all of their other stuff. And I've just very much enjoyed their music. I very much enjoy their message. It gives me a kind of catharsis. And I've seen this band, Anti-Flag, in concert probably like 8 or 9 times in different states. I've seen them on Warped Tour. I have seen them when I was in actually when this goes back a while, my history of being a fan of this band and Chris and Justin's work. When I was in college, my sophomore year, I finally was able to have my car on campus, and one of the first times I remember actually driving down to Washington, D.C. Was to see an Anti-Flag show. I went down with my friend Siobhan O'Loughlin, who I haven't seen in a while, but I hope she's doing well. I drove her and myself down to D.C., and we saw them at the 930 Club. And since then, I've seen them at the Gramercy Theater for the 10-year anniversary tour of the Terrace State, the Bell House, where I first discovered the band The Menzingers, who, if you've listened to the show, I recently did a podcast called On the Impossible Pod discussing the Menzingers and how much I love that band. And it was really awesome to get to talk to Chris and Justin. I reached out via Twitter. I got in contact with, I think, their manager, Jesse, and he was like, and I initially thought just Justin was going to come. And then I found out that Number 2 was coming as well, Chris Number 2, and I got super excited because that guy is on stage. His stage presence, I would say the whole band actually, but Chris Number 2 in particular has a very magnetic punk rock, almost like, like leading, like absolute gripping stage presence when they perform. And I was super excited to get to chat with them, not just about politics, although we do talk politics a little bit. We mostly talk about kind of the history of the band. We talk about songwriting, guitars, stuff that I honestly hadn't heard them talk about too much in interviews, and it was stuff I was curious about. And we talk about their origins being from Pittsburgh. And I want to prepare you guys actually for something when you listen to the interview. We recorded this at the Earwolf Studios in New York City, and during the last 10 minutes, so around when you get to like 50 minutes into the interview, the fire alarm for the building started going off, and we stopped for a second, and then they announced it was a test, and we just kept going. And then towards the end, I asked what I thought what I thought was a pretty thoughtful question, and you can hear a whoop, you can hear an alarm going off in the background. So I apologize for that. It's the kind of absurdity that happens that makes me love podcasting and love this medium, because that just doesn't happen in a lot of other places, that a fire alarm goes off during an interview. But Chris Number 2 has given me an amazing answer to what I asked, and so I apologize for the alarm, but I ask you to stick with it, because it's a really insightful answer that he gave me, and I appreciate you guys being here. If you enjoy this show and you want to listen to other episodes, I've done over 100 episodes. They're all available wherever you get your podcasts, on Stitcher, Apple Podcasts, Spotify. I'm on Twitter at Comic Will Carey. You can follow follow me over there. And if you know someone who you think might enjoy the show, don't keep it a secret. I appreciate you guys helping spread the word about this thing that I love doing that leads to awesome moments like the one I'm about to share with you guys now. So thank you guys again so much for taking the time to check this show out. And let's go to my chat with Justin Sane and Chris number 2 from Anti-Flag. I really dig that bands are starting to get into doing podcasts also, because I think it's another way that people can kind of get to know you. Like it's really like comics, I think got onto it pretty quickly because you can be more yourself on podcasts and give more of an idea of who you are compared to being on stage. Cause
you don't get there's no demonstration of who you are as a human. When you're a comic, you just have a job and you go up there and you're trying to be funny.
Yeah.
And I think that you can have a style, but that's what everybody wants to be like. This is your style of comedy. This is your thing, and it's like, no, I just am a person. This is
exactly. So you get to kind of be a little bit more of yourself without the pressure to always be doing jokes. Or I would imagine, because I was telling Chris before you came in, Justin, I've seen you guys probably like 8 or 9 times over the course of like the past 13 years.
Yeah.
And if I was ever gonna like had to explain what punk rock is to someone who had no concept of it, like an alien, I would tell them about the time when I saw you guys on Warped Tour in the like middle of the Bush administration in the Bristow, Virginia stop of Warped Tour.
Yeah.
Wow.
And you were on stage.
Volatile.
Oh yeah, you were like so fucking angry, and I was like, let's ride to Valhalla.
Yeah.
Number 2, I'm with you. I'm gonna scream. I'm gonna yell. I'm gonna be respectful in the mosh pit because I'm really big and I want to hurt people. But yeah, this is and I was saying this before. I usually go and see you guys with a friend of mine who I haven't seen in a number of years. So she's gonna flip out when she listens to this.
Cool.
Because I'd seen you. I think the last time I saw you guys was the 10-year anniversary shows for the Terror State.
Okay, cool. Yeah. We did a couple in New York.
Yeah, at the Gramercy, which is still, to me, that album. I listened to it again recently because I hadn't listened to it since Trump has been in office, and it all still holds up.
Yeah,
it's an unfortunate byproduct of that. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, unfortunately, topically it holds up, and it's especially Turncoat. It's whether we can argue about whether Trump is knowingly a Russian asset or not, but he certainly feels like a Russian asset. He does a lot of things that seem to help anti-democratic regimes, Russia being one of them.
Yeah.
And so it's just kind of interesting that topically, a lot of the songs hold up, and then I think sonically the record really holds up. I think it's a great sounding record.
Yeah, I think Terror State is the one that I put a pin in as where we figured out what we wanted to be.
Absolutely.
There were all these, through the other records, there was a lot of, just like dipping our toe into sonic vision and how we wanted to approach using the medium of punk rock to have a message and an agenda. And I know that the argument can be made that that's always been punk rock, but I think that what we've been doing is different, just in the sense that we are purposefully trying to write the hookiest song we could write, so that later when you're walking down the street, you're humming a song about ending oppression.
Yeah.
The earworm side of it is, and not being afraid of the catchiness and the pop sensibilities of the bands that we think are great and the music and the art that we relate to, but somehow tying a bow on it and putting this social and economic and racial justice element into every part of it, from the artwork all the way down to the final second of music. And I think Terror State was the first time that full package ever kind of came together. And we've been kind of using that as a blueprint for records since.
Yeah. It's an incredible record to me. Like, and as far as like the sound of it, my favorite kind of sound for a punk band, where like the guitars are like very mid-range, and then the bass you can hear the bass on songs. I loved it. And the new single, absolutely shreds.
Oh,
I
that's
really,
awesome.
Thanks.
Hey Congersall, I really, really enjoyed it. I just heard it
Awesome.
yesterday. Actually, I was like, holy shit, they have a new album.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm so excited about the thing I was very curious about. Justin, I know you predominantly have played ESP and LTD guitars, and you're playing a Gretsch
Yeah,
in the new video,
Yeah.
which I found really interesting.
Yeah. Well, I mean, in the studio, we tend to play a lot of different guitars. On American Fall, we played the Gretsch a lot.
We used it a ton on this record.
And then
too.
on this record,
Oh,
2020
nice.
Vision, we used it a lot. Live, I'm very comfortable playing an ESP. And it's just I like the neck on the guitar, I like the weight of the guitar, I like how the guitar is very balanced. So just it feels good to me when I'm moving on stage. So I kind of dialed that guitar into an area where it's got the right sound based on what we did in the studio to kind of fit our set. But yeah, in the studio, like I feel like there's a lot more freedom to be expressive about, depending on the guitar sound we're going for and what we're trying to do, we'll move around, and no one ever knows it that we've switched guitars in the studio, but we have. Yeah.
Yeah.
Do you find that you play differently depending on the kind of guitar you're using?
Always.
Oh God, yeah.
Because when I think of Gretches, I think of Tiger Army.
Yeah.
and I think of like really cool like 50s rock.
Yeah, like
almost.
it's very stylized for that, right? I
Yeah.
mean, it's almost associated with those things. But Neil Young talked about the fact that he likes to play on shitty guitars because shitty guitars make him work harder on stage, and there is a truism to that. I mean,
man, like there's so many. Like I don't know if these people are total full of shit, because I feel like the antithesis of that. Like I want the easiest thing to play live because it's hard work for me, and I don't want to make any mistakes.
Well, I think it's hard work for you because and to blow some smoke and shed some sunshine on number two. He really is one of the best bass players in punk rock and in music. I mean, I guess that might be a stretch maybe, but in punk rock for sure. That said, you are a great performer and you're moving all the time. And I think that there are certain performers that just stand up there and they're literally playing. So maybe for somebody who's working hard to actually only play, maybe being challenged at their instrument is something they're looking for, that added challenge. Your added challenge is already on stage with you, where you have to play very difficult bass lines that you've written, plus you're diving through the air like some kind of superhero. So it's a little bit
your kindness to both myself and Neil Young is very welcomed. I appreciate that, but I am calling bullshit on people like that, because like even like Jack White says, like I don't set the stage up the same way twice, because if the piano's 4 foot away, the next day I want it to be 5, so I have to work a little bit harder to get there. And I'm like, that's just because it sounds better to say that it's not the same thing every day. A lot of it is the same thing every day, and it's always hard.
Yeah, well, that's the thing about performing. Like, no matter how, I mean, the minute you change venue, performing is hard.
Yeah.
Because, I mean, the sound that you walk up to every day is going to be different, even when you use in-ears. Like when you walk on stage, depending on the room, depending on the energy of the crowd, there's always something to adapt to when you're on stage. It's never the same. And I like playing a different guitar in practice, because I feel like that makes me work harder and makes me a better guitar player overall.
Makes sense to me.
Because practice, it's a very controlled environment. It's the same place all the time for me.
Yeah.
But when I'm on stage, I'm wrestling with a lot of things, and especially a lot of times I walk on stage and certain things don't work. The last thing I need to do is create other problems for myself or other obstacles.
Jump over this hurdle while you try to figure out a broken thing.
Yeah, a broken monitor mix or whatever it is.
I do want to say that none of what we do is working in a coal mine. So whenever I say it's hard, I just mean that it is a challenge to me in that moment.
Yeah, I agree with you completely. That's why I am a little sensitive to lots of comedians will refer to non-comedians as civilians, and I'm like, no.
Yeah.
Comedy is hard. It is not that hard.
Yeah, totally. I mean, both of us have had real jobs in our lives.
Yeah.
We don't want to go back to those jobs over this
Please
job.
listen to our record. It's streaming now.
Yeah. I will agree with you. I do, Chris, I do feel that you are one of like the best bass players in punk rock.
Yeah.
Like when I've
been on tour with the best bass players in punk rock. he is right in the top 3. I mean, it's amazing. Like, we were on tour with Less Than Jake, and I was watching Roger from Less Than Jake, who's also one of the best bass players in punk rock. And very recently, we played with Rancid at Riot Fest, and Matt Freeman, is kind of the undisputed best bass player in punk rock, because we all want to be a member of Rancid, whether it's Tim or Matt or whoever it is. Lars.
Sure, yeah.
But I just thought to myself, I was like, wow. And just a very short time, I literally played with the 3 best bass players in punk rock. And it's like really just an incredible thing to go through and be around that much talent. When you're around that much talent, whether it's guitar players or songwriters or bass players, it's something that it really strikes you. It doesn't just go by unnoticed.
Oh yeah, 100%. I actually wanted to ask you a question about bass playing, Chris. I'll tell you one influence you had on me. I recently, a couple months ago, I've started playing bass in a band again, and
cool.
I'm usually playing guitar. I was watching like clips on YouTube, and you're the reason I went out and got a Sans amp.
All right,
that little box is magic.
It's magic.
But I was curious because I've been playing guitar for since I was a sophomore in high school, and I thought, oh, I can play guitar. Obviously, I can play bass. Da 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 da.
Yeah.
Same root of the power chord. Okay, good to go. So I was curious how you conceptualize when you're writing a bass line. Does Justin have the framework of the song, and then you are working out what notes go where? How do you conceptualize bass lines?
It's actually very interesting, and I'm finding I've been really trying to study songwriting over the last 4 or 5 years, and just diving into how certain songs became the way they came, and what are the common threads between songs that I know and love, and why did they hit me in a certain way. I've been trying to figure that out.
Yeah.
And in that, I kind of broke down my favorite Anti-Flag songs too.
Mm-hmm.
And the one thing that I found to be kind of a universal truth is it is very rare if I've written the song that the bass line is crazy. Because usually I end up tapping out of the melodic instincts that I had when I was either writing the vocal melody or the guitar lead melody or whatever, and then that hurts the bass playing on the song. And then if it's a song that Justin brings in, I have a lot more freedom to kind of come up, because the melody is new to me, and it just kind of comes out that way.
It's sort of like the heavy lift is over, so you're like, I don't have to worry about that. I can just riff.
Yeah.
Where if you're doing the heavy lift of hey, I got to figure out every part of the song, then
it becomes much harder to
you're not just thinking about the bass.
And I think that comes down to, again, trying to study it and break down the things that work. I know that people love to talk to me about bass and the album Underground Network, because there's a lot of bass on that album, and I'm also using a Ernie Ball Stingray, and it's it's literally as loud as the lead vocal. It's a terribly mixed record too. But if you're a bass player, you're like, yo, this is my shit, because listen to this guy, he's all over everything. I am literally stepping on everybody. I'm stepping on drum fills, I'm stepping on lead vocal, and I was like, so now as an adult, I can be like, well, that was bad. How do we complement these things versus just kind of bulldoze through them? It was like Bugs Bunny hit my thumb with a hammer, and it was huge, and then I put that thumbprint on the record. So now I'm constantly trying to either lift, complement, or kind of fly under the radar, so that if you are a real bass player and you're listening to the new record, you're going to find things that I think are much cooler than some of the flashier things, but people will probably always, if Underground Network hit you when you were a teenager and you were really into this shit, that's always going to be your favorite record. If Terror State hit you, that's always going to be your favorite record. So I found that to be futile to try to recreate moments for people. So let's just work on making new ones,
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, because whatever first introduces you to the thing that you love, that's always going to be the favorite
ultimate
thing.
Yeah.
And it's
I know people who argue about the best Lifetime record, and I'm like, they're all the best, but it's literally the record that they found. Did they find Jersey's Best Dancers first? That's the best one,
Oh yeah, 100%.
Yeah,
I find I like certain records like for different reasons, and then I like when a band is like not beholden to their best or most successful album. Like it's like always continuing to do different things.
Well, the one thing that I really enjoy about us, and we kind of found this to be most true when we tried to do like the Terror State tour and things like that. We never had one album that was ultimately more successful than another. We literally from A New Kind of Army to Bright Lights of America had these 5 records that each sold 200,000 copies. And a lot of our contemporaries in the scene had records that would sell 500,000 copies, and they have this one big record, and we never had that because we kind of were just like pumping them out under the radar of everybody the whole time. So when we try to do like, yo, let's celebrate this record, like a good majority of our audience is like, we're not very familiar with that. So it would be great if we could do that and pull that off, and we had the one that everybody universally knew.
If we had the Outcomes, the Wolves.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And that's the thing. It's like
our closest would be the Terror State to that.
I know For Blood and Empire is
excuse me, I'm sorry, For Blood and Empire. That's what you're correct.
That's our most popular record, but it is only,
it's only our most popular by maybe 100,000 records versus
versus like
500,000.
Yeah, like Punk and Drublic for No Effects.
Right.
They've sold 1 million copies of that record. They've sold 200,000 of every other one. Same thing for Rancid, Outcome the Wolves. So like Taking Back Sunday, like they've got the big record with Make Damn Sure, like sold 1 million copies. We never had one of those, so we kind of we can't do that. And I get jealous of we just did Real Big Fish, and they did turn the radio off, and it's like, yeah, because you had a fucking hit. Like we never had one. Fuck you,
Yeah, but at the same point, you're not you don't have a crowd of people that are you have people that are like, I can't wait to hear songs from this album.
Yeah,
I want to hear songs from this album.
Yeah,
the entire crowd is not
it.
just waiting. The entire crowd is not just waiting. When are they going to play Sell Out?
Yeah.
And that's no disrespect against Real Big Fish, because I
No.
think they have a lot of great songs.
It's
Definitely.
It's a great record. I mean, that like Beer is on that, like all like
Beer.
their hits are on there. But and it is a fun game to see, especially as we tour the world. We'll play in another country, and a song that we didn't really have much success with, A, B, or C, we'll play that, and then it's like it goes off, and you're like, oh shit. I guess they like Broken Bones in Germany. Like,
right. Yeah. Right.
I love stuff like that. Have you guys ever played Japan?
Yeah, we really want to go back. We haven't been since like 2006, I think.
I love Japan. I've been there a couple of times. Keep me on your short list if you need a tall merch guy.
Okay, great.
For that tour. I was curious how the shows over there went, because I've done comedy in Japan, and I found it really interesting seeing how that crowd reacted to certain things I say. Like I have this joke about gun control, and they just laughed at it like no one ever laughs at it here. And I was like, that was like my Bill Hicks moment. I was like, oh shit.
Yeah.
So it was really. Yeah. So I was curious were there songs are there songs that you played in Japan that the crowd really went off for and you're really surprised about?
Yeah. So what we found is that because Fat Records is such a force in Japan, those records like Underground Network and Terror State, even when This Is the End and Press Corps off of For Blood and Empire were really hitting, those songs weren't connecting. People were really focused on the Fat Records stuff and wanted to hear, we call it the forbidden beat. It's that boot that boot that boot that boot that Fat Records sound.
Yeah.
They wanted that, and we only have like 3 songs like that. So anytime we would do that beat, it'd be like, oh shit, they love it, and then we'd go to the typical Anti-Flag kind of mid-tempo anthem, and they're like, we don't care for this very much.
One thing that I was just reminded of about Japan, when For Blood and Empire came out, we did a number of versions of that record in a number of different territories, and one was completely in Japanese far as
not
the
the songs, but the
we
lyrics
didn't
were translated.
perform it, but we didn't perform it singing in Japanese. But the booklet was like completely in in Japanese,
Mhm.
which is really interesting. Like it's kind of a
Yeah.
cool thing. We did that in a couple of different territories.
When the major was Most Afraid of Us, which was the first record, we got them to do everything we wanted, and part of that was to do translated booklets, because it was the first time we ever had record labels outside of the U.S. So we had an office in Germany, we had an office in Japan, we had an office in the UK. And this was brand new to us, everything.
Yeah, we were like trying to think of how can we exploit these resources as much as possible. Like,
Yeah.
how can we get as
100%.
much out of it? Yeah.
100%.
And that was one way.
A
That-
great
and that-
rock and roll swing.
So that was really cool to go to Japan though and like look at our record, and it was completely in Japanese. I was like, wow, and it was a huge booklet. So that was a really interesting thing.
My copy of American Reckoning, I think that's the acoustic EP
Yeah.
is called, is from the Shibuya Tower Records.
Oh,
so
cool.
I have the Japanese version
like
of
the
that
sleeve
album.
on the
Sick.
side.
Yeah,
Sick.
yeah. Which was
That's that
which was
one
super
sale
cool.
that I saw.
Yeah.
Yeah, that was me. And the other times I'll say every time at the 930 Club or the Record Theater, rest in peace, it is now a nightclub, or the Gramercy, the guy doing all of your stage moves back to you, that was usually me, because what the album For Blood or Empire was the album that introduced me to you guys, because I lived in the boonies in Maryland, and then my college town outside of Baltimore, Towson, that was like the big city to me.
Yeah.
So that increased distribution that everyone was like calling you sellout for was really important to me, because I don't know how I would have ever found that record.
And to jump on that was really important to us too, because we it was interesting because Tom Morello had a huge influence on us throughout our entire career, and he was one of the people that was really pushing us in a lot of ways and guiding us towards a major label. And one of the reasons that he gave us, he was like, look, it really does make a difference as far as having an influence where you're actually able to reach some ears that are gonna be exposed to ideas that you're bringing that know that they're not going to hear otherwise. And he had that experience growing up in Liberty, Illinois, because Libertyville, because he grew up in the boonies like you're describing, So when he found an MC5 record, he's like, what the fuck is this, know? And so and then when we were traveling across the country, we had like a similar experience where we would be in the middle of nowhere, but there would be like, Target or Best Buy, and they would have records in there that kids for 100 miles, like that's where they got their records.
Yep. That was my experience.
Yeah. And so we kind of, we definitely had, that was part of the rationale when we decided to make that move. And it's also why that was probably one of our most political records ever, as far as loading up a booklet with political information. It was almost like a political manifesto, because we knew that this was going to get into a lot of hands of people, that this was going to be their one chance at holding a document like this full of kind of like these progressive political ideas that in their little town that they were never going to be exposed to.
Yeah, there was a thing that happened when we signed to Fat. And so this would have been for Underground Network in 99, where I thought our lives were going to change. I thought, we looked at how big Good Riddance were. We looked at how big Lagwagon and NoFX were, and where we were. And I thought for sure that you now are famous because you're on Fat Records, and people just buy every album that label releases. That didn't work. Nobody cared. The record came out. Nothing in our lives changed. Everything was the same. We played the same shitty show we were going to play regardless of being on Fat Rec.
Yeah.
Fast forward to signing to a major, and when everybody says, oh, you signed to this to spread your message, we had already touched the stove and been burned by this belief that our lives were going to change based on the letters on the back of an album, and we knew that to not be true. So we kind of went in guns blazing, saying like, you can't promise us enough, because we know that it is not a your album comes out on RCA on a Wednesday, and on Thursday your lives are different. It was going to take a lot of work from all of us. So we put in a lot of protections and a lot of these things that we're talking about, alternate booklets and making sure the packaging of the record was what we wanted it to be. And all of that was in place because we didn't buy the lie. We didn't buy the story that our lives are going to be different. Now, in hindsight, that's our biggest record. So one could argue, yeah, you spread your message to more people because more people own that one than they own any other Anti-Flag album. But I think that that's just due to the hard work and that the songs are really good. I don't think it has anything to do with RCA. I think it's just because a lot of the songs on that record connect with people, and punk rock was really growing as a community
I think
in
so.
the early 2000s, and that has a lot more to do with it than who the label is. So anyone who is in a band who's going to do something because they think that opportunity is going to, blow the doors off their lives, that isn't how it works. Get out
Right.
your hard hat and do the damn work.
Yeah, it really is true. I mean, yeah.
Don't
If
start a
you're not-
band because
if-
you think you're going to be famous.
No, because
Oh,
yeah.
absolutely. Or you
Yeah.
will just end up sad.
Yeah.
There's got to be
I mean,
something.
you might also get struck by lightning.
There has to
Yeah.
be something behind it. Ultimately, is the point. And if there's nothing
agree.
behind it, it's not going to go anywhere.
Yeah, absolutely. And 100% with that community aspect, because I hug more random strangers at your shows than I do any
Yeah,
other
yeah.
place. Maybe
That's our
suck.
thing.
I really dig the excellent vibe that you create at your shows. And I was curious because I kind of wanted to trace this. Are you both from Pittsburgh
Yeah.
Mhm.
originally?
Yeah.
So you're both,
All four of us are.
And we
All
all
four of
still
you are.
live in Pittsburgh.
and you all still live in Pittsburgh. So
Yeah, we've
so you didn't have to move to New York or LA to.
Yeah,
do
that's
things.
a
You're
myth
just
too.
doing the.
right.
just
Yeah,
doing the damn
No,
work.
no, exactly. I mean, we just got in the van and just started to do it. And you see a lot of there's lots of other bands out there right now who were from small towns too. Like, for example, a band that we're friends with, the Menzingers. They were,
I love
you
that.
know, from
I-
Scranton, Pennsylvania.
I
you
heard
know,
of them seeing you at the Bell House and
Right,
Yeah,
opened.
yeah.
right. And so that's just one example. Or the Bouncing Souls, who
Mhm.
were from Jersey. And, oh, geez, what I was gonna come around to something that you were just talking about.
Something about like
the
just
community of the shows.
Oh, well,
Yeah.
yeah. I mean, it's, when a big part of why I liked punk rock when I found it, other than the fact that it was just a bunch of misfit kids, and it was okay. I realized it was okay to be a misfit, and that, I was finally in a place where it was all right that I was different than other people, and people actually thought that was cool, and people embraced that.
yeah.
But the other part of it was like, and there was like this political edge to it, especially in Pittsburgh. The punk scene was like, had this total political edge that I think kind of grew out of the working class history of Pittsburgh and the work, the
Mhm.
labor organization that came with that. But what was almost the most attractive thing about the whole thing, and the reason that I really, really went all in on punk, is that it was a lot of fun. And we,
Yeah.
we realized, like, the number one thing that people will take from your show is, did I have a good time or not?
Mhm.
And if they're not having fun, they're not going to be open to the ideas that you're bringing.
Right.
So it really is important to us that our show is a place where everybody can feel safe, where people can come to have a good time, where people are going to be respectful of one another, because ultimately that really is why the four of us are on stage to be there. We do want to have a good time. And,
Mhm.
before you bring the message, it's like, well, did I have fun tonight? Because if I had a shitty night, that's what I'm going to remember.
Yeah.
Yep.
There's never a moment that I can think of where we've had a show and the show has not been good because of anything other than people are making other people not have a good time.
Yeah.
So
Right.
whether
Yeah.
that's just like somebody's drunk and they're being kind of overly aggressive with somebody they shouldn't
Mhm.
be, or whether there's somebody trying to be ultra macho in the pit, or any of these things,
Yeah.
it is that impedance on the other people's ability to enjoy themselves that is the most offensive to us as a band. It's never a bad, people didn't clap for us, we had a bad show. We don't care about that. That happens to us more times than not.
Yeah.
The only thing that really is offensive to us, or the thing that we take fault with, is when people are hurting other people in some way.
Yeah, and that was what
Mhm.
I remember the first time I saw a band stop their show because somebody was fighting. And that was at a punk show. And I thought, wow, out of all the other genres of music, this would have never happened.
And
Like,
I
the
Uh-huh.
band actually cared about the audience members enough to stop. And I think that happens once in a while at shows in other genres, but more than anything. You'll see that at a punk show where the band actually cares about the audience to be like,
Yeah.
oh man, that guy just grabbed that girl in a way, like,
Sure.
nope, that's not going to stand. Or, whoa, that dude just sucker punched that guy in the head.
Yeah.
Like, we're going to
Yeah,
stop
we stop
and
we
deal
stop
with that.
any moment we see that, and I'm always blown away whenever somebody doesn't, and we're standing side stage. And I'm like,
Right.
what the hell? You need a fucking jukebox for people to be an asshole to? Like this sucks.
Yeah.
But I also understand that Justin and I have, we're not afraid to talk into our microphones, and a lot of people that play music aren't the most articulate without their guitars. And
Right.
and I don't say that as a knock on anybody else. It's just been a skill that we have really worked on. So I know that there are a lot of people that when things don't go how the plan is,
Yeah.
They don't feel comfortable
don't feel
confronting it because
comfortable.
they're not
Exactly.
exactly sure how to confront it, and that's fair.
Yeah,
you
that's
know.
totally
Yeah. Yeah. Totally.
So
But
I don't put that. I don't hold that against people, but I also, after the show, have said to friends like, "Hey, when that happens, you need to, just stop. Like, I know it's gonna be uncomfortable for you, and you're gonna have to figure out how you start the song again. But like,
yeah. Totally.
And coming around to your point, though, yeah, I mean, I think it is important that the show be a place where people can come and have a good time and know, like, wow, when I go see Anti-Flag, it's gonna be fun. And, so that's the attitude that we try to go into.
that's where the hugging comes in.
Right. That's
Yeah.
where the high five at the end of the show. That's where put your arms around each other. Let's sing a song together. Pat and Two get in the pit. It's just like,
I always love when you guys. do
Yeah,
that.
I mean, that's really special. And
Sometimes people don't.
even for me as part of the band, like, that's inspiring because I realize, like, wow, this is about so much more than just, the four of us on the stage or these songs that really, like, and people will sometimes say, like, well, punk show, you're just preaching to the choir and whatever. I don't have a problem with that because I feel like you're also building community. You're letting people know that they're not alone. You're letting people know that they have a place where they belong. I mean, in this world, that's a hard thing to come by sometimes. When I was 16 and working at the local diner and, everybody at the diner was like, that kid's a fucking weirdo and fuck him. And people treated me like shit. And I knew at the end of the night, like, yo, when I get out of here, I'm going to go to a punk show and I'm going to be with people who actually respect me and treat me well. Like, that was important to me. So knowing that that's out there for people, I think is really special.
Oh yeah, 100%. And punk, I think, is one of the communities where that is a very, very important, because I feel like I can't think of other genres of music where that's exactly the same. And yeah, when I would have been your friend when you were 16.
Yeah, right.
Because
right.
I was absolutely that kid too. I was a theater kid, so I was like staying after school building sets and like doing lines and stuff. So that was
nerd.
Yeah, 100%. 100%. But it was so important to find that thing. So I wanted to ask both of you because I feel like punk has a lot of people when they find it, it's a very like epiphany kind of moment for them. So you're saying that and I was wondering if you could tell me what that moment was for each of you, and if you could, you were saying Pittsburgh's punk scene was very political also.
Yeah, it was, and I mean the bands that came before Anti-Flag all had a political ilk to them, whether if it was
even the
Ultra,
old bands. Like, it's amazing to look back at Car Sickness, which was like a band from like the late 70s, like, and they had this song called "The Cop and His Dog," and it was about the cops like using their dogs on punks, like, and like a song called Bill Wilkinson, which was about a guy who was involved in the KKK. Like, it's amazing that to find these old punk bands in Pittsburgh and realize that tradition ran so deep, and then the bands that we were influenced by, like, that were a couple years older than us.
Bad Jeans, Os Rotten, all those bands. But I think that Press Gang, you're correct that the history of the town is politicized. And
right.
To the core of, we are byproducts of people, both of us, of families who immigrated to America.
Right.
And the livelihood that they came to was taken away in lieu of corporate profits. And so that politicized our parents, and we saw them struggle, whether or not they knew they were being politicized, but the rug being pulled out of our families, out from under our families, made us question why that would happen as children of that, and we all we grew up in comparable families, big families. A lot of them were poor, and that was Pittsburgh. And that's why people were always felt like their backs were pushed against the wall, and that's what leads you for looking for hope, and hope comes in the form of angry music a lot of the time.
Yeah, and Pittsburgh was like, my dad described it as like Pittsburgh was in the Great Depression in the 1980s and the early 90s, like, and where other parts of the country sort of began to recover from, industry being taken away from their communities. Pittsburgh didn't. I mean, my dad worked for the same wages in, 2002 that he was working for in 1980,
Right.
I mean, there's such a stagnation of wages, and, that was the town. I mean, it was like this giant post-revolutionary ghost town.
Yeah. And what did your dad do?
My dad was a contractor, so he, he was a general contractor. But he, his customers were people who worked at the mills. I mean, people made a decent union-paying wage.
Yeah,
and
those were
jobs,
the houses that he would work on.
So overnight. And by the way, like my dad always said, the best people to work for were working class people because they knew what it was to do hard work. So if he worked on like people who were mill managers or people who were bankers, for example, or people in white collar jobs, they were the shittiest people to work for, where working class people were always the best people to work for. They paid better, they treated you better, they were more understanding, they didn't rip you off. And so, but it was just really interesting, like, and I grew up working with my dad a lot, so I was around that a lot too, and seeing that. And so it wasn't like we didn't work, it was like people were still working hard, even though the labor landscape was changing. And in Pittsburgh, over half of the population left in a very short time because
when the steel mill shut down.
And that happened in a lot of other cities. So it's not like Pittsburgh was the only city that had happened in, but our identity was so much in those steel mills.
Yeah, and I think that's the major point of it, is that the identity was that Pittsburgh was a steel town.
Right. Manufacturing city.
Yeah, at the expense of the people and the environment of Pittsburgh. It was a steel town.
Right.
And to the point where we ruined our rivers. We ruined much of the natural landscape around the city.
Yeah.
And then crippled the economy and the people when they moved those factories away. There are places in town now that should be built, should be waterfront property, should be enjoying the prosperity of the new tech Pittsburgh that has Apple and Google, but they can't build anything there because the ground is so fucking polluted,
right,
that it's just they'll just leave it as abandoned earth, and that abandons people that still live there. So bus lines don't get out there because they can't build the grocery store there. So the reach of that devastation is not just over now because there's a shiny new Google office. Like, we are dealing with it today. And I think that when you drive around the town, and if you are a creative person, you're like, this is fucked. I want to talk about
I'm going to write a song about this.
Yeah. 100%.
That was the environment that we came up. So that, that just helps explain, the attitude of the band and why the band, why we wrote the kind of songs that we wrote.
Yeah. So it's basically ingrained, like the working people getting fucked is ingrained in your DNA from early on, and then you're like, let's fucking start a punk band.
But I mean, because the thing is, it's like you go, okay, well, the working people are fucked. Who fucked the working people?
Yes.
And then that's where you find your enemy. And then when you find your enemy, you find out that enemy is the same person who's starting the war. That enemy is the same person who is
polluting our air.
Yeah, further marginalizing LGBTQ plus people.
Yeah.
Like, it's the same. They're the same people because their only allegiance is to greed. And so it becomes very easy to use punk rock to channel that.
Yeah, 100% greed and like their own interests above others.
Yes, always.
So Anti-Flag kind of you guys have been around like since what, the 80s?
Well, no.
yeah.
Yes and no.
Yeah.
Justin
when
in high school, Pat and I, the original drummer, or Pat, who is the drummer of Anti-Flag. So Pat and I started Anti-Flag together in high school.
But you were like kids.
But we were kids, yeah.
They
and
didn't.
then we
They didn't play. Like,
no.
I mean, it would be just like you.
I'm
we
familiar
had a
with that
show.
arrangement.
We had a show in a church basement, and my sister was in the band at the time, and then that disbanded. But we always liked the concept and the idea.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So we
but
brought
that was
that
with
idea
the
back.
name Anti-Flag.
Yeah.
So that's where that story comes from. Is
Right.
he had the name even as a kid, which
Yeah,
is,
yeah.
which is a great name.
Yeah. I thought of it in the shower. I remember just, showering under my armpits and thinking,
Would have been a lot better if you called it Nickelback, buddy.
Yeah.
well, funny. It's so funny you say that, because when I was interviewing Tim from Alistair, he told me that they used to play bands. Their like first name for the band was Fall Out Boy.
Oh.
Like before Fall Out Boy were
That's
even
great.
a thing. I thought that was hilarious.
That's very interesting.
And did you guys meet each other in the punk scene in Pittsburgh?
Yeah, I was going to the shows and drinking a box of wine and passing out on their stage, and then it was funny because I was actually better friends with Jamie, who was the bass player before me.
Yeah, the person who he replaced. Yeah.
And she wrote me a letter saying that she was no longer in the band. And while I was reading that letter, the phone rang, and it was Justin, and he asked me to go flyer for one of their shows. And then I was like, well, I play bass too, but I didn't really play bass. I lied.
Lies. It's all lies.
But I thought I play guitar. I can play bass. So I was like, I just read this thing. You need a bass player. And so then we just started kind of jamming together and
figured it out. Yeah, went from there.
Now
Excellent.
21 years ago.
Yeah.
So.
But
That's
that is
awesome.
cool though that we had that connection through the punk scene and through music.
Yeah. Because I love your vibe in interviews. Like I've seen you guys together, and I love the way you bounce off each other. I'm enjoying it now.
Yeah.
Also,
Yeah.
this
Cool.
this chemistry that you guys have, and so Anti-Flag forms. I think you have a couple albums before A through F Records is founded.
Yeah.
Did you have any concept of how to run a record label, and what did you learn starting A through F?
No, I mean, well, it's actually AF Records, which
No,
it's fine, but that was from my dad, and he said, fuck. And so that was like, we're like, oh, Anti-Flag, fuck, that's good. So we'll call it fuck Records, but nobody calls it that. Everybody calls it, as you did, A through F or AF or whatever. But yeah, I mean, we just, we had put out a record with a very obscure, unknown record label now, a split record with a band called DBS from Vancouver. And the record label basically just never paid us. So we thought, wow, that sucks. Let's take those songs and let's just put them out ourselves with some live music. So we kind of, rather than work with another record label, we did the classic punk thing where you're like, we don't need anybody else to do it ourselves. And we didn't know how to do it, but we just fished around and talked to people and asked them like, hey, how do we make these records? At that time, it was CDs. CDs was the thing. So
right.
At the time, we were like, well, hey, how do we press a CD? What do we do with them once they're pressed? And, we just kind of figured it out and just went from there.
Yeah, so it's an interesting story. So Die for the Government was the first full-length record. The songs that were left over from the Die for the Government session and a few live shows that
we had recorded from like radio
three-piece,
shows.
That became Their System Doesn't Work for You, which is the first AF Records release.
Yep.
And Pat designed the artwork for it, and it's fucking terrible. So if you want to have a laugh, look at how bad the artwork is.
And if you have a really good eye, you can spot Chris Head, who
Chris
wasn't
Head is
in the Anti-Flag yet.
Yeah, he's in the picture on the cover, and then
in the front row rocking to us on
and
stage.
And he later joined the band to tour on that record.
Yeah.
And then that was the same tour that I tried to do, but I wasn't any good, and they were like, you can't be in our band yet. So they went on tour for like 3 months. It was a crazy long tour, and I did flyer for that show. And I flyered at Warped Tour, which is funny. And so I went and I flyered for their hometown show. And for the next tour moving forward, ever since then, I've been in the band. So it's a really funny thing with the first AF Records release where Head is on the cover. He joins the band. I flyered for the CD release show. I joined the band.
Yeah.
It's almost like there's
It's a
an
work for
intern-
hire.
It's an internship. Yeah, it's like the one internship that actually does have a promise of a job afterwards.
Yeah. Yeah.
Oh, that's great. And so this is like what year was
So I joined September 98.
98?
Head joined
Yeah, 6 months earlier, maybe a year
it was like
earlier.
97. It was like a little before. Yeah.
Mhm.
And just one quick shout out, the guy who really helped us figure out how to do the record label stuff was Nicky Garrett, who was in the band the UK Subs, and he released Die for the Government for us on his now defunct New Red Archives record label.
Mhm.
But he was a big help to us too.
He was a big help, but he also gave a really crappy deal, and now somebody else owns Die for the
Yeah,
Government.
that's unfortunate. That's true.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I've seen that happen where like bands like they don't own the original recordings but a few bands are looking if they still own the actual songs. Like
Yeah.
Yeah, we
just-
do own the songs, we just don't own the recordings.
Yeah, so
Uh-huh.
so Die is the only record that has that type of a bad deal. The rest of them, we learned our lesson from
Yeah.
that.
Well, and the one thing though that I will say about him that was very ethical. He only signed us to one record.
Yeah.
Like and
Right.
a lot of labels won't do that. They'll sign you to a bad deal for 3 records, or in Victory's case 12
10, yeah.
records, so
Uh-huh.
and a lot of labels, especially back in the old days, I think when labels mattered a lot more than they matter now, when you were a new band, they would give you a bad deal because nobody knew who you were, and they were going to spend a lot of money to record your record and manufacture it, and they're going to put a lot of money out. So in a lot of ways, it was fair that on that very first record, they're not going to pay you a great royalty rate,
No.
et cetera, et cetera.
Sure.
But it's when they do it on multiple records that's when to me it starts to become unethical.
Yeah.
And that's why I think he was really cool about it. It was only one record, and then the record did really well. So if he had given us a bad deal, he would have been able to make a lot of money from us.
I feel just a little bit bitter about it because we're in total control of so much of Anti-Flag's life.
Yeah.
Mhm.
And Die for the Government, which is such a important record in the history of the band,
That's
Yeah.
is the one that we don't have
Right.
any say in.
right.
For
And
sure.
so
Yeah, it does hurt to see it repackaged.
well,
like
it just
by
came
some
out the other
label,
day
yeah.
on vinyl. It's through Cleopatra now, and it's a great record, and you should buy it. And they do. Justin, Pat, and Andy make money off of that record.
Mhm.
So if you buy LPs, you should buy it. It's beautiful. But it would be so sick if they were like, hey, guys, we're going to do this. What would you do? What would you like? But there's no communication. It's just somebody putting shit out just to put it out.
Mhm.
And we don't like to do that. Like, our whole thing has to have focus and have purpose. And anything that we release, we want it to be a thing that is either better than the original or leaving things better than they were, in some way providing a service. And
Yeah, it's really weird to see your name on something that you had no control
yeah,
over.
and so I'm
That's
just a little
very
bit bitter
strange.
about that. And he's always
Yeah.
the nice guy and I'm the bad cop. So that's that dynamic that you
Yeah.
enjoy.
Oh yeah, 100%. Like, or even like on stage, like you're the one like yelling at the
Yeah.
crowd in between and songs, and then Justin's
He's like, okay, be nice. Yeah. And I'm like, you motherfucking shits. All right.
well, that's the kind of, but I'm that's a shitty situation for that album.
It could
but-
be much worse.
Yeah, but then also thinking about, like we were talking about earlier, about like tons of bands or even your peers, they have that like one big album. That's cool, but I think it is what's underappreciated, and I think this, and I don't know if you guys would agree with me on this. I feel like what you guys do, and that you're same with like the Menzingers. I always know the next Menzingers album is going to be amazing. Listen to it front to back. I always know your next album is going to be amazing, and that to me, I think, is like the like uncelebrated part of being an artist.
Yeah. Yeah.
Like, and I think that plays into what I feel, because I feel like punk is like a very like real person, working class kind of music,
Mm-hmm.
and just the cool part is like being able to do the thing, record the record, and then go and play the shows.
Well, one thing that I will say that I truly believe that we do really well is we censor ourselves when something's not good.
Mhm.
And I think that is a talent, and I think that you have to be able to be honest with each other, which sometimes doesn't come right away. It comes slow. You have to ease each other into it. Like, you don't just want to say to somebody, yo, that song that you wrote that you love, it's no good, you know, and it's not gonna make the record. And we'll write a lot of songs and they don't make a record.
Well,
you
that
know?
Right.
that
And-
became the mantra, is to write more, because what was happening was our feelings were getting hurt, and we were, and then it's like, well, it's okay because this one's gonna be it. You know what I mean? So,
Sure.
yeah, I think that what you're talking about goes back into just the work and the work ethic on it. I will tell you that there were some years where we weren't working very hard, and it's you can smell it on the records. I still think even at our worst, we can still write a great song, and there's a few great songs on all those records where that work ethic dipped down. But now, since really like 2014, we had like this kind of like major dip in the band where all of us were feeling uneasy with the path that we were on, uneasy about the commitment that each other had made to each other and had made to the art and to the work. And we had some pretty heavy discussions about what to do about that. And I will tell you that we are a better version of ourselves now, today, in 2019, than we were in even making, you know, like the touring around for Blood and Empire and what happened after that. Like we're a better band. The show is better. The songs are better. The focus is it's just more attention to detail in what we're doing.
Yeah, it's amazing. Like, there are some nights when I come off stage and I'm like, man, I wish everyone could have seen what just happened tonight, because it's just a good show, you know? It's like, and that's such a great feeling to come off of stage with that feeling like, fuck, I wish we could share this with 1 million people, you know? And not that it wasn't special for the people who were there, but just to know, like, this is the best version of our band.
Yeah.
That's a really great feeling. And it's true with records too. Like, when you've worked on a record and it's all put together, and, you know, from the first song to the last song you feel good about, and even going deeper, you know, with the packaging and the, you know, the art that is the physical art that comes with the record. When all those pieces are together, you know, that's really, like, you just know it when you have it, and you realize, like, there is a certain level of commitment and work that goes to get to that point.
Yeah, I mean, and just to kind of finish this thought, like, they're all our children, and we won't speak ill of any of them. And I find
of course,
really important things and really important moments in each of them that we can carry with us. But you also, as you get older and you become an adult and you recognize that it is okay to celebrate your successes and victories, whatever they may be, that's kind of where we've turned the corner, and we're like, it's okay to be proud of the thing that we worked on and that we created. I think that pride is a stupid thing, and I've always felt that way, and it's kind of the self-deprecation of punk rock has always kind of crept in on us, and we've never been allowed to be like, yo, we're good. But the truth is that, like, not a lot of people do what we do, and we've worked at it for 25 years, and and now I finally feel like, well, fuck you, we're pretty good at this.
Exactly.
Well, yeah,
comedians have the same disease.
Yeah.
Every show, so many shows I do, it's like, you're terrible.
Yeah.
They're bad at this.
Yeah.
And then every like 10 shows, they'll just be like, I am a fucking god right now.
I mean, speaking of comedy, you know, Steve Martin has that thing. You have one good show a week, and that's all you get. And, you know, like, you might have some really great moments, but you have one great show a week. Doesn't matter who you are. Doesn't matter if you're at the top of your game, or, you know, playing arenas or playing punk clubs. Like, that's just the way touring is going to be. And there's a lot of truth to that, because it's an ultimate feeling of all the things coming together at the right moment. Amongst the people that were there, amongst the people that were on the stage, the people that worked the bar, the people that let you in the front door were nice to you. so you didn't get like planted this seed of negativity right when you walk. Like all that shit, happens and creeps into your psyche. So I definitely feel like there's a lot of internal band therapy that we've done with one another to get to this place where we're free to be like, yo, here's what you can do better. Here's what I can do better. How do we work on this? How do we be better? And that's just kind of what we've been doing for the last 5 years.
And probably it is with getting older. Like you do start to take it less for granted, and it's things have been changing in our band. Like, 2 of the guys have kids now for the first time. And that's a difference. Like you realize like, oh, okay, things have a shelf life maybe. And, even when we were, preparing to come to New York and we were going to be playing some of these new songs acoustic, and I was thinking to myself, I'm like, we're sitting there working on them, and I'm like, well, I could look at this as work, or I could look at this as there are so many people who have been into our band for so long, who maybe picked up a guitar because of our band. They would just be fucking so stoked to be sitting in a room with number 2 and I when we're sitting down to figure out how to do these songs acoustic for the first time. Like if I got to sit in a room, and I would never compare us to like on the same level as like Lars and Tim Armstrong, but if I literally got to go sit in on that session and watch them figure that out, that would be amazing to me. And it's like, I realize I'm like, so when we talk about like it being a job, it's not, that's a great time. And you should look at that as a great time, so that it's not going to work. It's like I'm getting together with my buddy to work on our song. And that's a really special thing. And it's sort of, so your attitude about it changes, the idea of like taking it for granted. And, I think like when you hit a certain peak in a band, you're like, oh, it'll always be this way, or it's always going to be there. And then if you can kind of get yourself to a place where you're like, this might not always be there, I do need to realize that what we have right now is really special, then you actually start to embrace it, and you look forward to it instead of being like, fuck, I got to get up today and go do this thing that I consider work.
Yeah, totally. That makes absolute sense. And especially like you could be playing music that you don't like. You could be doing a million things. You could be a refugee on the run. I mean, there's a lot of things you can be doing. I mean, so it's so there's a lot of perspective that that you
it doesn't mean that we're not allowed to have bad days. We got bad days.
Sure.
But I also know that we have internally tried to extend the optimism of punk rock, not just into the world is worth fighting for, but it's okay to
it's okay to have fun.
And
I know that we've literally said to each other, like backstage or somewhere when things are going bad or things that we're like, we're here, this should be fun right now. So what do we got to do to turn this around? Because what this is right now is not fun. It should be fun. So let's figure this out, and that's really cool to be on that page together.
Yeah. And it's great it's got to be great to be at a place where interpersonally you can and do that. That's like, I'm going to put that into other aspects of my relationships in my life. I'll probably be a better person for it. I wonder.
It's like having a harem. We're all married to each other. We got to keep each other happy. We've got,
That's how I feel about bands a lot. It always comes down to, oh, well, what songs are we going to cover? Okay, we can cover that song. Justin, I wanted to ask you a little bit because I loved your solo album. And it was the first time I'd ever heard someone sing and just play electric guitar. And then I went down the rabbit hole and found Billy Bragg and all of those guys.
And you're like, oh, he's just stealing his.
Which is exactly what I did.
Well, what was that? What I was curious about writing songs for yourself, because I think your solo stuff, while it is still political, it's maybe a little bit more personal than Anti-Flag's stuff is. I was curious if either the songwriting or the guitar playing process, if you approach it differently for your solo stuff compared to the band.
Well, I think a big part of the solo stuff in retrospect just came out of the fact that I was just so excited about playing music and just being in front of people and playing. I mean, I think that was such a big part of it. but it was also the idea that, hey, I do have these couple of songs that just don't fit in with what we're trying to do with the Anti-Flag. I mean, when we set out with the band Anti-Flag, we literally set out like with this vision of we're going to be this type of political band and do this kind of thing, and this is what it's going to be, and it's going to fit this mold. So so I was like, oh, I'm singing a song about this girl I like a lot. That just didn't really fit into what Anti-Flag was trying to do. So it grew out of both of those things, I think. And it, ultimately, like, I think that there's probably, with the Anti-Flag, it's interesting because it's kind of, we did create the monster that we set out to create. I mean, anytime when we kind of start to veer off course, it's almost like people are really into the band, call it out and push us back. It's like, it's a hard thing. People have a hard time understanding that and going down that, taking that journey with us. Yeah. That's a hard thing to do. So primarily, I think that early on, I started to realize that we had kind of created that monster, and it's still sort of there. Like people don't get jokes by us on stage very well. Like it's funny because when we're alone, we're always joking.
We are
and
hilarious.
Yeah. but it is funny. Like when the four of us are together, we're not that serious. Like we sometimes we'll talk about politics or we'll talk about this and that that's going on in the world for sure, but we also are giving each other a hard time and laughing a lot, and that's not something that you can take on the stage with the Anti-Flag and that translates well to our audience. They don't understand why serious. Are you guys making jokes right now? You're not the joke band,
Yeah, totally.
If I can comment on the your solo record a little
please
bit.
do.
I thought that it's funny because we have these kind of spikes in who is driving the car. You know what I mean? Like in the band, where it's like at that time, whenever Justin did those records, he was writing so many songs. And I had like 6, and he had like 80. And he had them on all these cassette tapes, and he was just banging them out. We had mini disc recorders. We had phones now with voice memos. Like it all was snowballing, and every technological thing he could have, he had to get his songs out because they were just kind of vomiting out of him. Yeah,
Turncoat was a song I wrote for the solo
record. He comes over to my house because I'm like, I don't have any songs. And I was like, can you come write with me because I don't have any songs? And he comes over and then he's like, well, I got this one for the solo record. And I was like, no, you don't. And so like
that's good. I want that.
So like that's kind of how that happens. And then there are records where I've got a ton and he doesn't have as many. We just kind of shift for whoever.
Yeah, that's true. And that's, I was thinking back earlier when we were talking about just how records come about and why the records are good and all that kind of thing. I mean, it's really amazing how there are times in your life where you're like vomiting out songs. You have so much. You're just like, banging at it. And other times where it's just really hard to bring out anything. And, and that ebbs and flows. And the luxury of a band is that, especially like a band where other people in the band write, is when one person really just isn't bringing it, hopefully somebody else is. And we've been lucky that way.
But that shit works. I mean, I feel this is a bit of a therapy session here, but all podcast is kind of
a little bit.
Yeah. But that works for all things Anti-Flag. Like, for example, all of us have had real life shit happen in the 20 years of being this band.
Right.
Yeah.
And what happens is that person goes away, but is never away. We're just, the 3 of us carry the workload. They just don't have to do whatever their job is at that time.
Yeah.
And that happened to Pat when he had a relationship end. That happened to me when I had a relationship end. And my sister, the death of my sister happened. Happened to Justin recently when he lost his mom. Happened to Head when, he had a family member lose his life. He had a relationship end too. 25 years of music is a long time.
Yeah.
Real life's going to happen. And we learn to kind of rely on each other. And then that thing extends into the entity of Anti-Flag. So, Chris Head predominantly does the artwork for like the band's touring stuff. We have people that work on art specific to records, but he then takes that and turns that into what the T-shirts are and what the posters are, and that's always been his thing. Sometimes that goes away because he's got to deal with real life shit. Pat has always dealt with the money. Like if you ask Justin and I if we have any money, we don't know. Ask Pat. Justin and I have always handled the creative side. And so it's just like there are these things that everyone's got a job.
Right.
And if somebody is unable to do their job because of something going on in their real life, then the slack then gets picked up by the other three of us, and we try to figure it out. And we don't do it as well, but it
usually works, which
along,
is amazing. Yeah. Which I think too is part of why the four of us have stayed together. I mean, it's interesting. Like there are certain bands that you look around and most of the original members are gone. I mean, I consider when 2 joined Anti-Flag, that's Anti-Flag to me.
Yeah.
We had one or we died for the government before that and kind of an EP, but the real band, Anti-Flag, to me started when 2 joined the band. So the idea that we're all still together is pretty incredible, that we've been able to, and that we have, that's a very tangible understanding with all of us now. But I think there was a time when that wasn't a tangible understanding.
Yeah.
We just did it and it was okay. And that's a really cool thing. I don't know that all bands have that. And
no,
I think
they don't. That's why people can go away, because they're replaceable. Make
Yeah.
yourself not replaceable, kids.
This is some great band advice.
Yeah.
Intersprinkled in here. Yeah, because you look at certain bands, so it's like, oh, well, they've changed lineups 15 times, except for that one person. Questions there. I agree with 100%. And then like just being there for your people is something a big part of
You gotta do
how
that.
I live my life.
Yeah.
One more thing I'll ask you guys, and then the new record comes out in January.
Yes.
I can't wait to hear what you guys have put together, and now that I have your phone number, I'll text you
Yeah.
how I feel.
Thumbs up, thumbs down.
I imagine I know it's great, but this is the I guess the one kind of political question I want to ask.
Oh, do you hear that?
Oh my God! Now
Oh my gosh!
Smoke. Is it a fire alarm?
Oh, hold on one
Here we
second.
go.
I'm not editing this.
This is your fire safety director. We will be conducting a test of our life safety response
Oh, it's just a
system.
test.
Please disregard any strobes or tones that you may.
Oh, we're gonna get some strobes and tones, people.
Oh my gosh!
There's gonna be a dance party in here.
I guess I'm gonna try to ask this question while the test happens.
Yeah, I love it.
I'm not gonna edit this out.
This
This is too
great.
unique. This is great.
Good.
This
This is real life, people.
100%.
This is what it's like being in a band. We're lucky to be alive.
I mean, the punks shouting over some kind of announcement has, I think, a tried and true tradition in this thing. This is too perfect. So this is what I feel like almost, this is like maybe the most political question I have. I know you guys have been asked this a lot before. I almost feel like I've been bluffing my way through a political science class.
Yeah.
I love the new song, the Trump sample with that, with him with you tuning up the key is just so powerful. And again, you sound so fucking angry, Chris. When you think about the state of American politics and in world and the world as a whole, and then you think about, even though the impeachment inquiry has been opened, and you think about, well, if it gets to the Senate, would it be open? When you think about kind of like the states of the world, when you think back to maybe even the way your folks might have felt when they were being co-opted by rich, powerful people, when you get beaten down by that, like feeling to be overwhelmed or become cynical, what do you do?
Yeah. Well, it's funny because it happens to each of us. And then that goes back into the last thing we were talking about, where someone's got to pick up the slack, because some days I walk in and I'm like, burn it all down. This is fucking bullshit anyways. And then
we literally had a podcast 3 weeks ago when I came in, and I was like, guys, I'm done.
Yeah.
I hate it's over. Fuck this. Which is which is crazy, because I know. And then we had a therapy session on our podcast, and I was back.
It was great. It was a great episode.
The reality is that apathy is 1,000% easier to spread than empathy. Cynicism, incredibly easy to spread, because it's much easier to be like, yo, here are the 10 things I fucking hate than it is to say, here are the 10 things I love and why I think other people would love them too.
Right.
Because you'll get judged by the things you love. You
Yeah,
don't get as
definitely.
equally judged by the things that you hate. So when you're standing up for people, when you are doing the real work of creating tangible, empathetical events, whether that be letter writing campaigns or whether that be volunteering at a
Mhm.
homeless shelter, whatever it may be,
Yeah.
that work isn't applauded. Anti-Flag goes and plays a show.
Yeah.
And at the end of the song, people clap for us.
Yeah.
And we get this giant boost of optimism that we didn't have
Uh-huh.
45 minutes prior to the show. So it's an
Yeah.
unfair question to ask a band, yo, how do you stay optimistic in such arduous times? Like, well,
Sure.
motherfucker, tomorrow people are going to clap for us. You know, like,
Right,
it's-
right.
the people that I feel bad for are those people that are on the front lines of activism, which is why over the past 20 years, it's been a mantra of ours to invite those people onto our stage to
Yeah.
talk about the work that they do and the causes that they support, so people will clap for them, and they can be like, last night at the Anti-Flag show, 500 people clapped for me. That never happened to me before. Another 10 years of working in Amnesty. You know, like,
Yeah.
like thank you. Whatever
Yeah.
it is to
Uh-huh.
get you from Tuesday to Wednesday, you know, because it is truthfully, it is unrewarding work to
Yeah.
fight the powerful. And you know, I try not to pay attention to what people write on the internet, especially now in 2019. I know
Yeah.
that as we've released 2 songs from the record and announced the record on Friday, last Friday, I've gone down the rabbit hole a couple times and
Yeah.
watched the alt-right kids argue and say insane, racist, and hateful stuff on
Mhm.
the posts that we make, and it hurts my heart, and I feel bad for people that don't get to do what we do and don't get to go around and meet people such as yourself who inject us with further optimism and give us the ability to keep going. It's got to be really hard to be a person who carries empathy in their heart right now, because everywhere you turn, it's negativity, it's cynicism, it's apathy. And what we're trying to do with this new record, why Donald Trump is on the cover, why he's a sample on the first track of the record, is
Yeah.
we want to make a record about right now. We
Mhm.
want to make a collection of songs that will have an impact on the immediacy that we're facing. We want to take a show of hands of people that stand up and celebrate LGBTQ plus people, women, people of color, those that are most victimized and marginalized and downtrodden in America in 2019 and around
Mhm.
the world. And we want to send them love and solidarity in any way we can. And that's what the songs are about. That's what the record's about. And that's been the mantra of Anti-Flag since the inception of the band, but it's become more pinpointed and focused on today more now than ever.
Yeah. And I think it's important because that's the case, because it feels more urgent now more than ever that's being attention. Keeping empathy in your heart, that's fucking beautiful, man. I think that's a great way to, as the strobe light continues to flash in my eyes.
Yeah.
I think that's really great and really powerful. I really can't wait to hear the new record.
Thank you. We're excited to
Dope.
get it out there.
Yeah.
Chris, Justin, I really appreciate you guys taking time to talk to me from the bottom of my heart, and I would talk to you anytime you guys are in New York
Yeah.
City.
Thanks. Yeah, it's great to talk to you too.
Excellent.
It's a lot of fun.
Awesome. Thank you so much, guys. I'm glad I could give you hope the way you guys give me
Yeah,
hope.
right on.
You do,
Peace.
absolutely. Peace.
Thank you. I don't know if you can pick up on my nervous, excited energy during that interview, but that was one of the biggest thrills to get to talk to two people whose music has meant so much to me for such a large portion of my life. Thank you, Justin and Chris. I sincerely appreciate you taking time to talk to me. And I think that might be the only interview they've done where fire alarm has gone off continuously towards the end. So I might have a little unique thing there. That was quite exciting. Thank you again, Justin and Chris. Thank you, Jesse, for helping set this up. And thank you to Dave from Stitcher for helping me with the technical side of getting this interview situated. I really appreciate it, and I am not nothing for the kindness of others and the people I have around me. So thank you guys again so much for taking time to listening to this. If you've never heard of me before and you want to check out more episodes, I've done over 100 episodes with comedians and musicians and creative people. I really love doing this, so if you think you know a friend who might enjoy this as well, we're available wherever you get your podcasts. I'm on Twitter at Comic Will Carey. Also, if you want to get a free month of Stitcher Premium, you can go to stitcherpremium.com and use my promo code AWESOME. You can get a free month if you are thinking of signing up. That's another way you can help support the show. And I also want to thank my supporter on Patreon at the awesome producer level, Mary Beth Mooney. Thank you so very, very much for your support. And if you want to see some of the stuff I'm doing over there, you can go to patreon.com/awesomedisaster and see some of the stuff I've got going on over there. And Anti-Flag's new album, 2020 Vision, will be out in January. I'll have links for it in the description. I'm going to pre-order it, and I cannot wait to hear. Based off the first two singles, I think it's going to be an awesome album, and I can't thank you guys enough. The only reason I think I get to have cool experiences like this and talk to people who I've admired for so long is because people listen. So thank you guys again so much for being here. I really appreciate all of you, and I'll see you guys next week between Awesome and Disaster. Take care, everybody.